Who among everyone in this world has not had a dream about having sex with one of their parents? Never acting on them ever, I myself did have dreams of having sex with my mother, although incest is quite controversial topic.
I have a question for God. Why?
I know, I'm really late for another video. To be honest, to be true and honest, I've had like 5 different ideas for new topics, but I was being indecisive. I feel like I had a lot to say on this particular subject, cause this one hits close to home.
How we supposed to start a family if we ain't family?
Yeah, we'll get to that. Eventually. I promise. I've been following Kerri-San for a couple of years now. I've become quite the encyclopedia of Kerri-San lore. I know Kerri-San better than I know most of my family. How could that be, you wonder? Well, it's the power of the internet, mainly. I fell down the rabbit hole, and I had to keep going. I was convinced it couldn't be this deep. And then the branching paths led to more branching paths. It was far from random, however. Every path I walked felt interconnected, like a spider's web. Large and overwhelming, but beautifully constructed. 20 plus years of documentation. Documentation of the life of one human being. One soul out of 7 billion. World leaders can only dream of their legacies being this well documented. But this is no world leader. This is no influential political activist who dared to change the world. No. This man was by all means an average kid. An average kid who couldn't stop himself from engaging with this brave new technology we take for granted. Welcome to the Quick Zone. Christian Weston Chandler, born Christopher Western Chandler on February 24, 1982, was just a regular kid born in Charlottesville, Virginia. He developed autism in his early childhood, but his parents, Barb and Bob Chandler, insisted that he was no different than anybody else. They made him attend the regular school with all the other boys and girls, not realizing that his lack of special education would hinder his development later on. He was dropped into a world he was ill-equipped to understand properly. Aren't we all? But besides his often neglectful parents, Chris had some happy memories from his youth. His childhood friend, Sarah Hammer, his favorite elementary school teacher, and who would forget winning a Sonic the Hedgehog shopping spree? That's a moment that could last a lifetime. A crucial memory of a time where life was innocent. A time before you had to grow up. Once high school hits, everything changes. Friends become harder to make. Everyone's obsessed with their image and their status in this dystopian environment we're forced by law to attend. Do you remember all your friends you had in high school? Were they even really your friends? Or did they just feel sorry for you? How many of them were eager to talk to you after you got your diploma, after you were free from the prison? How many times were you overlooked by your teachers or your fellow classmates? How many times did you feel like you didn't belong there? You didn't fit in. But it's all over, you tell yourself. Now I could be whatever I want. What do I want to be? What am I going to do for the rest of my life? I have to do something. I didn't graduate for nothing. How can you know who you want to be if you don't even know who you are? Who are you? I don't care about your name. I don't care about your favorite meals. Just, who are you? Are you even a person who belongs here? Do you live? Or do you just take up space? Who do you want to be with? What does she look like? What's her personality? This world is an empty place without someone who will support you till the bitter end. There's so many people in this world. There has to be one for you, but who are you? How can you be an individual when you've spent your life pretending to be like everybody else? What strong friendships have you built? What girl would want anything to do with you? Every time you've ever tried, it's the same story. I have a boyfriend. Tell me why you feel like life is no better now than it was when you were a kid. Being an adult means freedom you can never have before. You can make your own money, buy a nice car, buy a nice house, have your own family, and rule the world, but none of that happened. What went wrong? Something went wrong somewhere. Mistakes were made, calculations were off. This was not how it was supposed to end. In the distance, a small ray of hope emerges. The internet, video sharing, blog sharing, vibrant communities full of people who like everything you do. Once you switch on that camera, you are on stage in front of the whole world. Anyone can watch, so that means everyone is watching. The internet was a much more freeing environment. Everyone was anonymous. They were free to be themselves, free from judgment, free from bad reputations. But it is naive to think that nobody is documenting you. Somewhere in the void, somebody in the world is watching your every move. Every outburst of rage, every petty conflict, every email you send, every message of love and happiness. Everything. There's always someone watching you, but little do you know that there are those who simply watch and those who choose to engage. Groups of people from God only knows where, hatching elaborate schemes to mess with some other guy they've never met in their life. Do they hate you? Do they like you? Or are they just here to amuse themselves? The answer might shock you. It's all of the above. Alright. You've been flexing your Poetry 101 skills for the past 7 minutes now. What the ungodly fuck shit point are you trying to make here? Well, I'm making a point the only way I know how. This is the reason I find Chris-chan to be the most interesting cultural phenomenon. There's literally an entire website with 5,000 pages, 5,000 plus pages on every move he's made for the past 20 years. How did this happen? A lot of parts go into answering that question. Some could say it's a creepy cyberstalking campaign, and that's part of it, but when the same guy offers up gems of wild facts like frequently shitting his pants or drawing creepy cartoon porn of his best friend, would you ignore that? You don't want to just see the car crash. You want to know what happened, when, and at what moment, and what's to blame for everything else. What the sweet Jesus fuck happened here? Not everyone starts in the same place. Most people start with Sonichu, and that's where the interest sparked. But some have found him because of his embarrassing videos of him flirting with Ivy, or even the video of him making fun of 9/11. You could just ignore all the things he says, but what about when he never stops making his private life public? What about when he drowns you in information that you never asked for, completely of his own volition? You can't help but take notice. Maybe that's enough for you. You're only interested in being a casual observer of the mayhem. That's most of us. But for others, they want to see what they can get away with, thinking of new ways to get a reaction out of him, all for a cheap laugh.
They don't ask you to come over anymore. They're afraid of what you might take. They're afraid of what you might break. They're afraid that you'll freak out. But most of all, they're worried about the mess that you might make. Cause they don't want a mess. They don't want to admit that
Christian Weston Chandler has faced every breed of internet troll. You got your Clyde Cash. The Clyde Cash is more or less your average internet troll. He says some shit you'd probably disagree with, but at the end of the day, he just wants a reaction. What made Clyde Cash exceptional is that there are times where he genuinely made an attempt to help Chris improve. Unsurprisingly, Chris was simply unwilling to listen, a habit which he replicated for many of his real-life friends. Prank calls and ordering pizza only goes so far, however. Anyone can do that. How do you go one step further? Chris has talked ad nauseum about wanting a boyfriend-free girl. So, what better way to mess with him than pretending to be a pretty girl interested in him? This is a trick that Chris has fallen for numerous times, despite the fact that he should have known better by the second time. This tells me that this was Chris's weak spot. Chris was a lonely guy, and he would do anything to not be lonely. Introducing the flood of internet girlfriends: Ivy, Blanca, Julie, Casey, Panda Halo, and Jackie. Many of these quote-unquote women were designed as a perfect match for Chris, pretending to be fans of Sonichu, matching his love for video games, but most importantly, being boyfriend-free. The perfect girl for a virgin with rage, stuck in a sad, lonely cage. If you know Chris beyond Sonichu, you probably know about all of the girlfriend sagas. The love quest was vibrant and chaotic, creating some of the greatest moments in Christory. Who could have forgot Chris battling it out with the brown-striped imposter Liquid Chris in a SingStar challenge that would determine who wins Casey's heart? Who could forget Chris doing increasingly embarrassing things to win Jackie's heart? Oh, you know what I'm talking about, alright. It's burned into your mind forever, too. Cake farts! Sonichu was at its prime with all of the internet girlfriends around. It was seemingly the only thing motivating him to do so. All is great, until we reach the more depraved side of the trolls. Some people don't want to just laugh. They want to cause pain. They want to genuinely cause harm to Chris. I need only say 2 words. Blue Spike. Responsible for making Chris record himself shoving his medallion up his ass, threatening to post his PSN account on eBay, threatening to out him as a pedofork for sexting a 13-year-old boy. But most people agree Chris is not a pedofork. You dorks! But yeah, in retrospect, nobody liked Blue Spike. That was just a horrible thing to do to somebody, especially somebody you've never met. Chris has done and said a lot of shit, but he did nothing to deserve that. This is an important contrast that only Kerri-San could have taught us. It's easy to dehumanize trolls and assume they're all just as bad as Blue Spike, but that simply isn't the case. There are many instances where trolls have tried to get through to Chris about his more destructive habits. Most notably the Casey saga, where Chris had to convince her father that he was worthy of his daughter. Both Matthew and Casey pointed out Chris's poor health and unhealthy eating habits. Even when Casey has shown incredible distress over this, Chris did very little to assure her he would improve. Matthew also called out Chris for his more sociopathic tendencies, like comparing his dead mother to the death of his childhood dog and his casual mocking of the 9/11 tragedy. All of these attempts were in vain, unfortunately, because of Chris's refusal to accept any form of criticism. To the casual observer, the constant harassment from trolls is what drove Chris insane over the years. This is only half true. There are some weird people on the internet, but very few of them are overtly terrible people who just want to cause pain to others. Having people deliberately messing with you to spark a reaction will change the way you think overall, but as you go further down the rabbit hole of Kerri-San, you realize that Chris has never had the most solid grasp on reality to begin with. There are many instances where Chris was an overtly terrible person, completely independent of troll influence. The Adam Stackhouse saga is a good example. Megan Schroeder is another notable example, but the biggest example that comes to mind is how he dealt with Michael Schneider. Michael Schneider, former owner of the game place in Charlottesville, where Chris played Pokemon cards with Megan, had banned Chris from the establishment based on his angry, sometimes racist outbursts of anger against small kids who often frequent the game place. Chris proceeded to harass him for several years to let him back in one instance nearly running him over with his car. This had no troll influence whatsoever. This is how unhinged Chris was before ever meeting the trolls. He was also banned from Target for loitering, banned from the Fashion Square Mall for disturbing the peace, suspended from his own college for threatening the Dean of Student Affairs. None of these situations were troll-influenced either. Chris was destined down a very dark path from the beginning, mostly due to his remarkable ego and lack of self-control. Speaking of dark paths, yes, it's finally time we talk about that event.
to do it on your own, all alone. When you get arrested and they take you to jail, your friends won't come to visit you and they won't pay your bail, 'cause they don't want to see how easy you can sink. They're afraid that you might drag them down. It could be them looking out through those bars. It could be them.
Here's some background. Chris's father, Bob, died in 2011 due to heart failure and left behind a sizable inheritance, which was quickly squandered in court cases to pay off Barb Chandler assaulting police officers. See, you think Chris is bad. Well, who do you think he learned this behavior from? Barb Chandler is a known hoarder and emotionally abusive liar, noted by Chris's half-brother Cole Smithy. As she's grown older, she's lost many of her mental faculties, which is made apparent in many of Chris's begging videos involving Barb. They're truly surreal to watch. Chris, as you probably know by now, is a very lonely person. Failed to find the right girl more times than he can count. And believe it or not, Chris has quite the nuanced opinion of incest, as noted in the intro. More nuanced than 99% of people, I'm willing to bet, which means he has thought about this for a long time. So yeah, one thing leads to another, and Chris fucks Barb. He's now possibly facing 10 years in jail for incest, which, if convicted, could lead to the end of Christery as we know it. So, the end, then? That's what I thought at first, until some new information came out that changes everything. See, Chris sleeping with Barb was likely troll-influenced. Some piece of human waste named Isabella thought she would claim the title as the greatest troll who ever lived by making Chris do the most unthinkable things. You thought the idea guys fucked over Chris really bad. Well, they did. They extorted money out of somebody who was already terrible with finances, but for fuck's sake, they didn't try to make someone sleep with their own relatives. Does this mean that Chris is innocent? Not really, unfortunately. Look at it this way. It should not be this easy to convince someone to sleep with their mom. Period. Other than that, that's all I got for you. Not much else to say on that front. Now to wrap up this mess of a video with a nice little bow. I really do believe every citizen of the internet should do a case study on Christian Weston Chandler. It should be the subject of an Internet 101 class, maybe part of a section called How Not to Internet. Christian Weston Chandler has been a perfect case study on how the internet reacts to different figures and the mindset of the kind of people who are out there. Excluding people like the Idea Guys and Blue Spike, very few of Chris's trolls harbored genuine hatred in their heart. In a lot of ways, they had pity for the dude. Also consider that Chris is a prime target for bullying. He's autistic, he has childish artwork that he posts everywhere on the internet, he has a history of temper tantrums, he has an inability to stop releasing embarrassing information about himself. He's prime troll bait. This might very well be the worst you could expect from the internet. The internet does have a reputation for being untrustworthy and full of evil people who just want to scam you. There are many documented examples of this, but at least when it comes to social spaces, it isn't as bad as most people believe. I suppose the last unanswered question is, why is Chris Chan so interesting? And why do people like me care about him so much? Why do I care so much about his life? I think I know why. It took me years to figure this out, but I think I finally know why. It's because we all relate to him. Okay, yes, I'm sure we don't all have problems with dirty craft briefs, and we don't all draw Sonic fanfiction, but look at his life as a whole. He's a relatable guy. He has had many escapades, and Lord knows he's tried to make the best of his situation. He held up signs because he was afraid of talking to girls. Tell me you haven't had the same problems. He cried because he had no recognition for his artistic achievements. Don't bullshit me, that's happened to you before. Chris had no idea what he wanted to do after high school. I'll tell you something, I can relate to that 100%. The reason we all came together to study Chris Chan is because deep down, in our true and honest hearts, we know that there's a Chris Chan somewhere inside of us. we aren't just gazing at some random guy. We're gazing into ourselves. I hope you all liked this video. If you did, complete your love quest by hitting the like button, or else I'm going to shove your ass down your throat and make you eat your underwear. I'm joking, of course. Always remember, love gets you fuzzy wuzzies, and war gets you prickly wicklies. As well as punches, they get you those too. I am Kerri-San McDaniels, and I'll be back someday. Bye!
They all wish that you get well, but they sure as hell don't want to, or they don't know how to help. They're afraid that they might catch what you got, and it scares them to death when they hear you talking to yourself, 'cause they're afraid that those voices in your head might spread.